It is a mystical, fluid, magical fucking thing, and you're trying to capture, you know, what's that, lightning in a bottle or whatever. And I do think of it that way, and I try and allow it to be fluid and remove my judgment more often than not, as much as I can, and trust the person who is guiding me through this, the director, and trust the person I'm acting opposite. And Jack Nicholson used to say, I always assume the person opposite me is doing exactly what they should be doing.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Eric Lange is an actor. He sat down with me in New York City to talk about the work.
When you get cast in a role, what's the first step you take to try to wrap your arms around the character?
For me, obviously reading it. You're just reading the manual of the thing. You know, you're taking in all the components of it. And there's a difference between reading something for consideration than reading something that you're now getting married to, you know. The first read is sort of a cursory, you know, it's more of you're getting early revelations about what is happening, what you're going to be doing. And for me, little sprouts will grow, metaphorically speaking, in my brain and in my heart. And I'll feel very connected to some parts of something. And some parts I'll go right through and I'll have no sort of sprouts, no seedlings forming. And I guess that's to say, I'm just making notes of my connection to something. And a lot of the time it's about a personal connection. It's about what Eric, because all these characters are parts of you, what you're bringing to this thing. And so Eric feels strongly about this, and this, and I know I can bring something to this. I know I'll have some point of view about these. And in other things, there's not as strong a reaction. So those things I know I'll have to go back in mind, and that's when stage 2 and stage 3 comes in, which is research and prep and all that stuff. And then you read it again, now knowing what's coming, and there's no surprises anymore. Now you start to build, basically for me, connective tissue. From the first thing that I felt something about to the next thing I felt something about, and the thing in the middle I didn't have a reaction to, maybe now can be connected to that because I know it's coming and I can build toward it. So it's really making sort of a schemata, almost like an engineer or somebody would draw up plans for a building. The building doesn't have a soul yet, it doesn't have its design, it doesn't have its decoration per se, but you know how you get from one end of the building to the other. And it's a schemata that I can see, and I'm quite controlling about all this, as much as you can control something that is, as we were saying, sort of mystical and magical and really uncontrollable. But I like to plan as much as possible. So I like to see sort of an outline of something in that way at first, just to know the schemata of what this story is. And then you go in and each scene, each moment, each beat, you know, fill those little pots as full as you can possibly make them, and allow things to grow.
And what's in those pots, though? Like, are you just putting words in there to trigger something to you? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
is that what it is?
It's, I mean, once you get into the creative phase, which is now I know the schematas thing. What is this? What is this? Then it's, I mean, I'm very particular about odd things. I like clothes very much. I like shoes very much. I'm in many ways an outside-in guy. I think to some degree all actors are, but for me, part of my biggest first obstacle is buying myself in the part. Because sometimes, especially with Escape at Dannemora, Lyle is almost as different from me as any person I've ever played. I mean, he's a very different guy. And my inner bullshit meter goes off all the time. Not authentic, not honest, not real, not true. So what the outside in does is helps me look into a mirror and just start to believe it. And then once the inside believes the outside, then I can come from a truthful place, even when I'm way out on a ledge. You know, I've built a support structure for my brain that tells my brain, this is the dude. You're the dude now. It's it's good.
It calms down all the questions you're telling your.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It calms down the inner voice so that the head can only be in the moment and listening and responding, and thinking as that person. So like outside in means clothes, means hair, means hats, means glasses, facial hair I play with all the time. I have a beard, I have a mustache, I have whatever. And then research. For instance, Escape of Dannemora is a real thing that happened, a real prison break. There is video of this person. So in this instance, I can look at that video and begin to try and figure out mannerisms, things like that. I can also look at the research of the town, who lives there, where do the accents come from. I work with a vocal coach. A lot of times it's book work, just simple book work, like reading about the history of the prison. I don't know that I'll ever need it. It
Right.
doesn't really matter to me. To me, all I'm doing is building up study in as many different aspects of this person's life and the story as a whole, because I'm just one part of a story, that I can quiet those insecurities, And so the pots, I guess, that I pulled out of my ass and mentioned are full of all of those things. And again, you sort of get there on the day and you just throw it all away because it's in there somewhere, stewing around. It's just backstory. A lot of times I'll just write backstory. Sometimes I do it because I've run and sort of hit a plateau with someone and the spark or the excitement has sort of gone dry. And a backstory will go, oh, that, it fuels things. It will feed into how you deliver a line in a scene that no one else will know but you. A lot of actors talk about having secrets or whatever that, that they create in their minds that nobody else in the cast knows. And, to me, it's just all trickery to allow me to trust myself. And because the odd thing about acting, it's such a personal business. You are the product, and your choices are a part of the product and the way you manifest this character. And it feels so personal and so exposing and vulnerable so much of the time that I just sort of build a little, these are just ways of supporting the risks and the efforts I'm about to extend on this particular part.
The product is you, and you're kind of like oiling this thing to keep it running right, because you know that you're going to get in the way of it working right. Your inner voice can actually get in the way.
For me in particular, yeah, and I hear it. The more I hear it, the more I'm relieved, because it seems common that a lot of actors have these insecurities that we're never going to work again. Even though I've worked for 20 years, you have multiples of everything. You still, every job, go, God, can I get this? Can I figure this one out? They're all like little Rubik's Cubes puzzles, and it's like, how do I re-engineer this one?
Yeah.
So I think the study and the sort of the digging in is just inherently interesting to me, and it sort of puts off, in a way, some of the creative, physical work, perhaps, or emotional work, and you're just setting a nice foundation for yourself to more safely jump into the more dangerous territory.
Can you tell the story of finding the teeth?
Oh, yeah.
For Lyle.
Yeah. That's a great outside-in
Yeah.
observation. They sent me the audition for this, and they said on the note that Ben wants people to become as close as possible to this very unique guy who has a really interesting accent and a really particular sort of speech impediment almost, and some really, frankly, unique teeth. And I got the video and I watched it, and I was almost sort of, I was terrified at how I could possibly get close to this. I just thought, why would anyone think I could do this? And again, it's just you're looking at a final product of a character, and I'm trying to go, how do I get to that? So the first thing for me was the voice. And I had a trip planned to Ohio to visit my parents. So all week I would play this video for them every day, and I would say, now tell me what you hear today. Well, he makes his TH's D's, so dat and dem, and he, when he says about, it's about instead of about. Like, we're just picking apart little habits. and rules, and he even breaks his own rules in the accent, and it almost sounds like Minnesota, but they're way northern New York, so that's almost Canada. So that is a part of that world, and you know. So I'm listening, and I'm trying, and it just feels like horse shit. It just, my bullshit meter is just way going, and I can't do this in front of someone. I cannot do this version in front. Eric and his, you know, my mouth, my brain, my whatever, could not get there. So I ended up sending the video to my old vocal coach from Miami University in Ohio, where I went to college. His name's Stan Brown, and he's a genius. And I said, "Can you help with this? I'm not getting there." And he wrote back and he said, "I think his teeth are preventing his tongue from landing in places where other people's tongue might land. I think his teeth are preventing his lips from closing around B's the way other people's lips are able to close." And so I get, this is a little personal, but it's what happened. My father-in-law, the day we were flying back from Ohio with my parents and this newfound information about these teeth, when we landed, my wife's father died, passed away of a heart attack. And so that was the day of the audition, and I called them and I said, I can't do this, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to do this, and I just need to step away. I'm sorry. And I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it anyway, you know.
Yeah.
And I took a couple weeks with my wife to deal with our family issue. And then Rachel Tenner, our casting director, called and said, you know, if you can put something on tape, I can hold him off and maybe we can still get you seen. In this process of my wife's dad dying, I had a newfound need to work. She was potentially going to stop working. It had really rattled our family. And I heard him in my head sort of say, like, you go get this. You go get this. You can do this, and your wife needs you to be supporting the family right now. And so I went to this makeup store called Cinema Secrets, and I showed them the video of Lyle, and I said, I need to become this guy. I have to do this. It felt like a bigger charge at that point, weirdly. And they said, well, let's go to the wall of teeth. And we went to this wall of nothing but fake teeth. And I ended up getting these Austin Powers teeth that you had to sort of melt the wax and jam them in your mouth. And I went home and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm begging. You know, my voices in my head are going off. And I jammed them in my mouth, and it was like I instantly talked different, instantly felt different about my face, the way I looked. And the accent was like, fit just in with the teeth, the THs and the Ds and the, you know, his little isms. And I'm like, I got it. I can do it. And it's everything to do with those teeth. So then I put it on tape and I put a wig on and everything. And then I think a day later they called and they said, Ben wants to meet you. And I went in and he's like, I just want to see it. I don't know how you did it. And I said, well, I have these teeth in a bag that I need to get out. He was like, get out your teeth, man. You know, and I'm like, here they are. You want to try them on? No, that's okay. But it was the key to a voice, but also a key to sort of a sense of sort of shame or embarrassment or insecurity that instantly became magnified by someone who's maybe trying to hide something, you know, that is right in the middle of your face. And we have a guy who's rather insecure, who has, you know, a relationship with his wife where she sort of is on him a lot. And it just informed so much about the guy, but all based on that one thing. It just calmed my bullshit meter down. And I don't often get to do something like this, because normally when you're hired anymore, if they want you to play a lawyer, they want a lawyer that looks exactly like you look. And that's what you do. It also costs money to make wigs and to do these things that when you're guest starring on something, nobody really wants to invest in. So it was such a treat. It was like doing high school theater again, where you're an old man or whatever. You get to wear all this artifice. And I love it. I just loved doing it, and getting there that way.
What do you need from a director? And is it better when an actor is the director?
There is certainly a shorthand and an experiential identification that happens with an actor-director that is different than someone who is maybe a great filmmaker and can create visual pictures and they fit you into their picture. And I think both can be freeing, but I was particularly glad to have an actor director on this, on Escape at Dannemora, because I was so far out on a limb. Mm-hmm. And there were times when I was like, is this just a caricature? Am I in the lane still? And Ben would say, no, it's right there, you got it. Ben has almost an obsessive ability to look at the details of things. And I think he's a perfectionist and extremely hardworking, and he has amazing taste, I think. And so when someone that you trust in all those arenas says to you, you're in the lane, you know, it helps. Other times you work with directors who really, you know, who are making frames, who are making pictures. And that can be freeing, because as long as you're in there, in the vicinity of where they need you in that frame, you're free to then create something. They've hired you already because of they liked what you did, and that's what they want. But some directors are much more technical, where they'll say, you know, don't put your hand on your face when you're at the desk. Like, that stuff kind of drives me crazy. It makes me a little introspective in the wrong way. I like, it's nice to get feedback of approval, but too much too soon can cause you to go, oh cool, I got this, and you maybe lay back a little bit. So it's nice to have someone who you're working to, you know, people who aren't easily impressed. It's really nice when you get the praise. Mm-hmm. It makes you work a little harder. But Ben, I think, had a lot of respect for the amount of passion I brought to the audition alone from moment one, the tape I sent in. And so by the time I got to set, I think he really had a lot of trust in me. Yeah. And that's what I want. I want to know that someone trusts me enough to let me play, to let me give me some room to move. But I also want to know if I move too far, that I'm not, you know, breaking an agreement with myself about where this character should go. I want guidance, but freedom. It's, you know, it's very hard to, it's like rigidly flexible or something. Is you know, it's like always, you know, you don't always know where you're shooting things. You get there and you're like, oh, what I had in my head is different than this room, and now I got to figure this. So it isn't. It's ideally it's a partnership, and ideally it's one where there's just massive respect both ways. So that if I do go outside of a given box, it might just be interesting. It might, you know, but I have permission to do that. We can always pull it back.
Lyle being a real person, one that you didn't necessarily have access to, I surmise, because he's not exactly happy about, you know, the situation. Mm-hmm. But him being a real person, how does this affect your work? Knowing he's walking the earth, mm-hmm. for me, that would like both freak me out. I would get obsessed about it. I would try and stalk him. I would try and find people that know him. I mean, I don't know. Or I would be obsessed about if I'm not doing that, and I should be doing that, or something. Or I'd be trying to find video of him as a child, trying to find his parents. I don't know. Yeah. Like, does this make any sense?
It does. Well, the only video of him to speak was the interview he did with Matt Lauer. And that was by design, because he was very angry at the media for broadcasting what was a really embarrassing situation for him. And he really felt the media has ruined his life. Mm. So he gave this one interview to Matt Lauer to sort of just say his side of the story, because everyone was talking about his wife, and everyone was wondering how this guy could possibly be ignorant to all this. So I had that. I had like him walking to his pickup truck when a news anchor tried to get him on a journalist, and all he said was, you guys, you know, you got the wrong story and whatever, and very limited amounts of information. When we got to Malone, which was the first city we shot in, that's basically, it's very near where he lives. I think he lives in Dickinson Center, which is just outside of Malone. So a lot of people we spoke to, and we went to the prison, and I met guards who worked with him for years. And so I got a lot of information about him that way. And some of it is positive, some of it's negative. There's people that, you know, most people had nothing but good things to say about him. Simple guy, you know, grateful to have his job, hard worker, you know, loyal to his wife, loved his family, but, you know, I think a very set routine. The most exciting part of his day is planning where he's going to eat dinner with his wife when they go home from work. They're together almost 24 hours a day. So you get all these pieces, and then we asked him if he wanted to talk, and he said no, he wanted nothing to do with it. So you get all these pieces, and I can put something together. I've played many people who are living people, met some of them, become friends with some of them. And other people are more bothered or concerned about how they're portrayed on a television show than others. You know, some people are like, we're not anything alike really, but it doesn't bother them. And Lyle, I tried to get as close as I could, but his voice is a little higher pitched than mine. It's slightly different. So my voice of his voice is not exactly the same. But when you don't meet the person, it does sort of free you to have some creative license. I can only glean so much information about his life. We did best efforts all around. I mean, our research aides on the show were incredible. So we did have a lot of information, but never a personal meeting. I never got to ask him, like, what do you take to lunch at work? What do you wear when you sleep? Like,
Would
really,
you have wanted to? Like, are those questions you would have asked?
Sure. The problem is once you enter into a relationship like that, where he's giving me sacred information about himself that I'm able to use however I want to portray this person, there sometimes can be a feeling of, so do me right.
Right.
You know, do me the way I would like to be seen. Right. And, you know, there's things about Lyle I don't know that maybe he's not aware of, or maybe he is, and they're embarrassing to him, or, you know, it's like anyone's life. I don't know how I'd feel about somebody playing me, or if I'd agree with their interpretation. But at the end of the day, you can just do best efforts. And then, you know, I always just try and find the dignity in anyone. One thing I think is interesting about the show is that it's not a show about how to break out of a prison. It's about people, and it's about choices people make. And one thing we did with Lyle was he's a very sympathetic character. He can be a very lovable character, a very funny guy, actually. But we tried to find where he was also culpable, so that he's not some shining diamond in all this. He's actually, you know, sometimes he takes his wife for granted. They've been married for 21 years. Maybe he, you know, hasn't taken the best care of himself. Maybe, you know, sometimes he's a know-it-all and he's annoying, or he talks too much, or what, you know. So I don't know what he'll think about those things, or how realistic or accurate they are to him. But as an actor, it sort of frees me from having the obligation of, I shook your hand and I'm going to take care of you, because that's not really my job. My job is to just present it as I see it, and I do best efforts to, you know, present it in an authentic light. I hope he can appreciate it. I think there's many moments in the show where we see he really is sort of the emotional center of the show. He's got the biggest heart in the show, I think. You know, there are many great aspects of him that we see. So I hope he appreciates that. Maybe it will give him a little kick in the pants and he'll get a kick out of it. I hope. I don't know. I think the whole thing is so, I can't imagine going through what he went through. Yeah. And I think it's such a damaging time. It would be hard to even watch. Yeah. But my bet is curiosity will win out, and he will probably turn on the television.
Because you're a character actor, this means you're often waiting on a set. And then it's like, all right, Eric, you're on. Let's get Eric in. And then you got to be on and ready to go. You have this one little scene to do that day.
Yep.
Preparation can only go so far when things keep shifting, and you have this little bit of a thing you have to do in this scene.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to be on when they're saying you have to be on. And the early part of the day was not performing at all.
Right.
And then you have to nail it.
Yeah.
Take me into the nuts and bolts of how you stay in the moment in the role when the situation is like that.
Well, you know, the old joke is they pay you to wait. The acting is free, you know. And it's true. It really is. Many times it's completely out of your control, obviously. They try and call you relatively close to the time that this scene is going to shoot, but often other things you know, I've sat in a trailer for 8 or 9 hours before. I've sat in a trailer all day and then been sent home because they never even got to the scene.
Yeah.
So the second part of that is sort of know thyself, you know. And early in my career, I would get to the thing and I would listen to the music that was getting me in, because music is also a big thing for me. I love listening to music to sort of set a tone for what's to come. But I would start in the car, you know, listening to the music, and then you get there and you got to go hair and makeup, because you got to, you know, well, first you might eat, and then you go to hair and makeup, and then they're all talking in there. It's a totally different environment.
Yeah.
Then you go back to your trailer and you turn your music on again. Yeah. And you get your costume on, you know, and I would put my costume on first thing I got in the trailer, and thinking foolishly I would work in minutes, you know. And then like 3 hours go by and well, I'll check my email real quick, and and then I turn my music back on. But ultimately, you're exhausted by the time they bring you out there, and you've got no juice left. Right. So now I know. I look at a schedule now. I can read a schedule better than I used to be able to, and I can predict a little better that there's going to be some time here. Certainly, I don't get into much. You know, get through makeup and hair, get in the trailer, have something to eat in the trailer. Maybe wait a while to put any clothes on. Sometimes I put stuff on because I'm inside out, I'm outside in. It helps me just get physically in the vibe of something. Like I'm doing Man in the High Castle right now. I'm playing a general, and that's an outfit you don't wear every day. That's not a suit, that's not jeans, it's a general suit with boots and the whole. So I'll put that on kind of early just to get in that mindset, because that feels a little distant for me. But it's about managing your energy. And managing the fact that once you get out there, you're going to rehearse. Then they might take 40 minutes to light after they rehearsed. So then you go back to the trailer again. Then you're going to get out there and rehearse again with the lights and everything. And then they start rolling. So it's about, you know, it's kind of like running to jump across something. You can run up the ramp a certain number of times to get your speed and your trajectory, but you don't jump until you're ready to jump. And so I've learned to encapsulate that process to a shorter period of time, and really all the work we talked about earlier on, all that prep, the better I've gotten about what prep I need for a certain day, the less time I also need to rev up to the moment of performance. So they all kind of go hand in hand in that way. But it is tough, it really is, and they pay you to wait. That really feels true. It's the most. I get more tired sitting in a trailer than I do being in every scene all day long. That's great when you're just rolling into one after the other, and you don't have time to overthink any of it. That's the worst when you're in a trailer, and especially with a short scene. The tendency is to go over something too much, and then you've squeezed all the juice out of it. So it is. It's time and experience and knowing your process that helps that along.
And what do you do to help you get out of a jam? Like if you just can't wrap your arms around a certain bit of text, or the other actor is just not connected to you in the scene, or you're talking to a piece of tape. The actor's gone, the lights are on, they're about to say action, and you're not there. What do you have a process to get there?
It used to be to become more anxious and more angry, and
that always helps, right?
Yeah, and then I realized, this is totally blocking any creative movement I might have. It depends. It depends on that set's atmosphere. That really is a key. Like some people, you're just not clicking with the director. You're not clicking with the co-star. You're not clicking in any way. And then I sort of have to give myself permission. My buddy calls it letting your belly hang out. And I love the phrase because it's kind of like a fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it. None of this is working.
It's also a great image.
It is.
Lifting
just
up your shirt.
Letting your belly hang out. And it's like, here's the version I'm going to do now. I don't know if I can please you. We're not on the same page. But you go back to, just trying to be honest. I feel like I get it. I just reduce it. If the flash bulbs and the things I'd planned in my head and the gymnastics that I had worked out in terms of where I wanted this thing to go are not there, then I think I'm fighting against something right now. Yeah. Instead of just going with what is here. A lot of times you're not there in any character. You're just not feeling it. And I always try and go back to, you work with what you're given. And maybe that day for that guy's tired. Maybe that guy's, like, and I make it a part of the thing. If it's frustrating to get something done, then that's what he will become as well. But I really just try and simplify it, because I feel like the more frustrated to get it, the more I'm overthinking something in a moment that's not working. Really just stripping it down to the bare minimum is what usually ends up being the take. They walk up and they go, "That was great. That was fucking great." And it's like, well, maybe that's what it should. Of course, that's what it should always be. Just being honest, just being present, and stillness adds up to a lot sometimes. So that's what I would say is my answer. It's not always easily achievable, and I often just leave that day going, "Man, didn't get it. And that's the worst feeling, because no matter what, I put in a certain amount of hours on everything.
Yeah.
A lot of work, and even if it's for a small thing, and when you get all that work and then you go there that day, and especially if you travel, like I live in LA, I fly to New York to do this stuff. For Narcos, we flew to Bogota to shoot that. 8 hours, 7 hours on a plane, all that work, and then to walk out and go, "I didn't happen," is a disappointing experience. But often when I watch it back, I'll go, "No, that's fine. It's fine. It was all my experience of what worked and what didn't." And I'm not the best judge of that anymore. So it is, it is a mystical, fluid, magical fucking thing, and you're trying to capture, what's that, lightning in a bottle or whatever. So I do think of it that way, and I try and allow it to be fluid and remove my judgment more often than not, as much as I can, and trust the person who is guiding me through this, the director, and trust the person I'm acting opposite. And Jack Nicholson used to say, "I always assume the person opposite me is doing exactly what they should be doing."
Can you give me a bird's eye assessment of this whole business and your career in it, and what you initially set out imagining it would be, what it is, what you are hoping for now?
When I first moved to LA from Ohio, I was 22, and I started working as an extra, as a background person, because I didn't know anything about film and TV, and I needed to learn, and that was what I treated as school. I had an acting degree from Miami and Ohio. I spent a lot of time in the theater. That was really lucky for me. But I didn't know anything about this side of the business, but I loved movies and television, so I was eager to try and work in it. So I was there, and I would watch people. I would watch the leads of the show or the movie, and I would watch another guy come in and say one line and walk away. And I remember thinking, God, all I want is just the one word. I want to say, like, any more coffee. That's all I'd be happy. That's all I will. And then, 8 years go by where I'm doing just theater, and commercials are making my bread and butter, but I'm doing theater at night. And I can't get these agents, and I can't get these managers. And you get sort of despondent about if it's going to happen or if it's going to unfold. And then all of a sudden I do a play, and my manager picks me up, and you get that one line, and you're like, wow, that's great. But, that other guy had these 2 scenes. That'd be nice to have like a role that, 2 scenes. And, I was an extra on ER. I was an EMT on ER. And I remember thinking, man, and I guess it was like 6 years later, I got the guest star on ER. And I was like, wow, book ending, what a dream came true. Mm-hmm. But, a regular, or a recurring thing would be really, I guess what I'm saying in a really long way is that no matter where you get, it's like I always attribute it to like hiking. You're climbing up this thing, and we're like, all we got to do is get to that top of that hill, and we're done. And you get to the top, and it's been hiding a higher peak behind it the entire time. So I think what is both the excitement about it, which is like accomplishing greater and greater jobs and feats, and yearning for more, as people should, to want more for themselves, can also be a trap of never really feeling content, because there's always someone above you to look up to go, man, how'd they get that, I mean, and the higher up you get, the closer you feel you are to things that are still now harder to get, because now you're competing with much bigger names than you were competing with before. And so much of it is out of your control. My wife used to represent directors, so she's in the business but on the other side of it. And she would always say to me that there's nothing all you can do is do the best work you can do and make relationships with like-minded people and people who you aspire to work with, and that's really what I've done at this point. I can't control if I ever become a mega star. As we said earlier, I'm a character actor, and I'm happy and blessed about it because I can work until I'm 90 years old, if I'm lucky to live that long. That's a great thing. It's much easier to sustain a career as a character actor than a leading man, because the shiny, sparkly look stuff fades. So that's what I'm trying to do, and like these limited series are sort of the prestige TV dramas to be a part of right now, and to have done Narcos and then Waco and then now Escape at Dannemora, and then Unbelievable with it's getting to work with people at a caliber of the business that's the top, and I'm trying to just enjoy that, and that usually takes me somewhere more interesting. It usually ends up, opening you up to new eyes who don't know your work, and new relationships. And it's crazy making to think you can control too much of it. And you end up always looking ahead and never really enjoying just where the fuck you are right now. Like, what an amazing day. Tonight we have the premiere of Dannemora, and I'm just like, I'm just tingling, It's a beautiful day. And that's sort of the way I'm trying to live my life. I'm, of course, always looking at projects other people get still and going, God, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That guy didn't even get to read for that, But it just doesn't serve you. It gets in the way of any sort of beautiful creative bloom you have in you. And so I try to just water what works.
Water what works.
I don't know what that means.
I'm working on a t-shirt.
It's back to my seedling reference or something. I don't know. But yeah.
Eric Lange.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much for this. Appreciate this.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. It's produced by Spencer Ring. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.